So you probably already seen, David and I did a really cool video a little bit ago. I don't know when this is going to come out, but really cool song by David. I'm going to let him talk about the song and everything. But the other cool thing was that we did a bunch of interesting recording things with this song with the stereo AEA ribbon mic and then feeding some more stuff into the room through some studio monitors to add to everything, because everything you heard in that video was just a live two take, one take. So let's start with the song because it's a really cool, interesting song. So David, I'll kick it off to you. You can kind of talk about the song a little bit.
Well, thank you for the kind words about the song, brother. I don't think I would have probably recorded it if it wasn't for the night before you telling me that we should. Yeah, it's a song that I wrote very 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 differently than I've ever written before. It pertained to my son's time in and out of the hospital this past year and a half. And I started trying to write it in a waiting room, and just because this is how I kind of process things, writing songs, but it wasn't a musical thing, if that makes sense. It wasn't normally there's sort of melodies and rhythms and all these spiraling musical things. This wasn't like that. This was more like journaling, I guess. And so it was a really strange process to try to figure out what it sounded like, also just because this is the first song I've ever written that I wasn't able to emotionally make it through the song without kind of losing it and being I think to perform a song, you often have to go back to the place where you were when you wrote it. And I think for me, that was a really bad place. That was a really bad place, and I wasn't in a hurry to go back there. So when I showed it to you that night, if you'll recall, Matt, I not only didn't know what key or tempo it was in, I didn't know any progressions. I knew nothing.
Well, it had
Uh,
never been performed. I mean, I think you wrote half of it in the car drive into Arkansas, didn't you?
I did, yeah, man. I think something about being close to my son. I never could work on it when I was at home, and I never really wanted to work on it just because, again, of the feelings that it evoked. But I think another side of me, the reason I started it is, while our story was scary, there were a lot of other stories while I was sitting in a lot of the waiting rooms at Texas Children's and so many others, where the other stories were so much more terrifying than ours, and some of the outcomes as well were just heartbreaking. And so I think there was another side of me that I forget, as somebody who wields music, that there's a lot of people that don't have, I guess, the ability to turn their experience into something that can go out in the world and also kind of make others feel like they're not alone in that, if that makes sense. And so I think for me, there's a side of this that really hope that some of those people, I think in that situation, you feel really isolated and you're like the only person who's ever gone through it. And I witnessed that in a lot of the conversations I had and a lot of the parents I met. And I think for a lot of them, though they were terrified, I think they were also just really alone. They felt like they were totally by themselves. And so I think for me, one of my objectives with this was just, if it ever was to become a song, that maybe it would be something that would sort of make these people not feel quite as alone in that, if that makes sense. But yeah, to your point, Matt, it was very strange. I just dictated it into a Google Doc while driving through your fine state of Arkansas, and wrote way more verses than will likely ever be heard by the world, rather, just because I again, in my mind, it wasn't a song. It was kind of just a series of journaling bits. And then, well, you watched it, man, that morning, the morning before we hit record. Like, well, I guess we better turn it into a song. And so I know musically it's not the most inspiring thing I've ever created. It's pretty simple musically, but I was pretty proud of how we did the heartbeat thing, Matt, and just your insistence on simplicity. Matt has known me for a long time, and when Matt heard this, he first of all insisted that we record it, which thank you again, brother, because I don't think if somebody would have pushed me to, I would have ever recorded it. But then also your insistence on simplicity and knowing my penchant for overcomplicating things to the nth degree so that I never have to release them. You sort of robbed me of that right off the bat, because you know me, man. So thank you for being a good friend and for forcing those limitations in the process.
I mean, I think the funniest thing about this is that we both kind of felt that need for simplicity because, like, we're both musicians, we write music and stuff, but like we've got a heavy production ground over the years. And so, we have a tendency to overcomplicate things. And even though this was like a one mic session that in theory, David, let's just throw up one mic and you won't have to think about things. It'll be more of a performance. Like this ended up being pretty complicated. I mean, no surprise.
Yeah, it was. It was, man. Yeah. Yeah. A whole, I mean, you think about just the chain of how many amps and vintage pedals and bizarre things we added to the signal chain, your tape machine. We found the most complicated way to do something simple. But the heartbeat thing was I thought a really tasteful thing. Matt's idea was one of the few musical things that I did kind of have in my mind around writing the song was when you're in the waiting rooms or when you're sitting next to a bed, there's just this constant beep of heartbeats, and it's just there all the time. And as somebody who records a lot, I don't even think about the fact that there's a metronome in my ear. I don't even hear the click. Sometimes I just leave it on and I forget it's there because it's so much a part of so much of what I do. But in a similar capacity, after spending so much time in the hospital, you have this heart monitor that's just always in the back and of everything that's happening, all the conversations, all the sounds. And for me, that was sort of this cadence that everything worked around. And we sampled, well, the heartbeat we sampled was actually from my son's original ultrasound, but we slowed it down and kind of processed it with an 808 where the sound of his heartbeats kind of locked in with the grid. And then your idea, Matt, was brilliant to pump it through the barefoots in the room. Were you happy with how that turned out and kind of how it translated?
Yeah, the first thing I remembered when we both had the heartbeat idea and we were trying to get it locked to a tempo and find a tempo for you to play the song. Funny thing was, we found like a 10-second chunk of the ultrasound that the heart was beating pretty regularly at a steady tempo. So we're like, cool, we won't have to like beat detective the crap out of this or morph it or anything and make it sound weird. But I think we ended up slowing it down like maybe 4 BPM or something. Like it was actually funny, like really close to the tempo you picked for the song separately. I don't know if you remember. Yeah, it wasn't much. I remember looking.
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, I remember looking at the grid. I think you just slowed it down like 4 BPM, so that was cool. Yeah, so you'll see in the video in the background, there's David's playing and singing, and then he's playing an electric guitar, and it's stereo guitar amps. So we kind of pushed 2 guitar amps off to the side and arranged them to where they'd be sounding like they're coming from the far left and far right from what the stereo ribbon was picking up, and then David was kind of stomping his feet a lot when he was practicing the song. So I think the first thing we're going to do is like, let's just feed an 808 behind the track. And I was like, well, that sounds like cheating. Let's figure out how to put it into the room and pump it through the mic. So we set up the 2 studio monitors, the 2 Barefoot Footprint 03s, and then that was gone. And then we had the heartbeat idea. And so we started feeding that into the monitors as well. So, I mean, pretty much what you hear in the recording, it's just the stereo N28 ribbon mic going straight to my Atari tape machine that's sitting behind me. And everything you're hearing is pretty much what it was like in the room. I think once I got the tape feed into Pro Tools to bounce it out, we added a little bit of reverb and delay over the whole thing, but everything else is just natural and what was coming through the room. So it was cool just me sitting in the room at the time because I had Pro Tools and the tape machine running in here, and then I had to go out and deal with all the camera gear. But yeah, it was just cool sitting in the room hearing it too. It's rare, especially for you and me, that what's actually happening in the room is what people actually end up hearing because we just have a tendency to overdo everything because we can. Like, it's just what we do. Doing a pretty cool little live video shoot today with my friend David Stukenberg. We're going to be recording live to tape on the Atari. Walk in here, got crap everywhere. It's been a hurricane the last 2 days, so got the AEA N28 stereo ribbon mic set up in the middle of all this, so that's the only thing you'll hear eventually. That's going to the tape machine. Got stereo guitar amps on each side. That's an Austin Hooks head, matchless. We're also going to try some cool things where we're going to feed a few things through the Barefoot Footprints. We've got like an 808 drum going in the background that he's going to play to and a couple of other things. So rather than add those in post, it's just going to bleed through the mic. So we're kind of doing a real-time mix in the room to capture everything through the N28. So pretty nifty, cool song, really good song, but we're doing some pretty cool stuff, so I'm really excited about this one.
Matt's making fun of me because this is the third time I've tried to make this video.
This is the sixth time he's lying.
That's true. Well, it's true. Actually, it's probably more than six. This is the third time in this sitting. Dusty supervising. Anyway, we just discovered a guitar tone that we're pretty happy with, and we figured we'd share it with some of our guitar nerd friends out there. First, we've got a 60s Supro that was in dumpster condition and restored by Mr. Robert Cheney. Robert, thank you again for saving this life. That's going into a tip-tone prototype of Peter's LA62. Love this thing. This compressor is absolutely incredible on everything. Going into Peter's version of a Klon, but that's not engaged right now, into a 90s Memory Man. Sadly, we're only using the chorus side. Unfortunately, we have not made any use of the 4 beautiful chips this thing has to offer. And then the dry send is going into a 70s phaser, Ross phaser, which is being sent out to another tip-tone prototype. This is something Peter's working on. It's really awesome. It's a combination DI and reamping box that has a vintage transformer and the ability to attenuate, which is awesome. Going back over here, not engaged. Coral flange is not engaged. Then we're going into an older Space Echo that's been modded. And then that is going into and that's from my friend Jamie. Thank you again, Jamie. This is going into the Deco, and then the Deco, we're just using that to split the tape heads, which is also being split into the Mimic. Matt had the great idea of doing this so we can control the respective gains of the amps a little more evenly. Amp 1 is an Austin Hooks ammo can. Love this amp a whole lot. Normally it would be going through one of Austin's cabs, but today it is going through Matt's Bad Cat because there was only so much room in my ancient Prius. We have 2 Barefoot footprints up here, through which we have some 808 stuff coming through. We're kind of experimenting with the way that we're recording this. Our other amp is a Matchless Baby, sitting on top of our awesome sound panels by GIK. Super cool. And then our method of capture is a little different than usual too. It's oh, look at that. Oh, wow. What presentation. See that, AEA? He is your next Vanna White. Anyway, this mic is amazing. Sounds fantastic. And we were using the stereo image that it creates to kind of use the placement of these amps very specifically in this recording. And then, oh, the stand. These are amazing. This was my first time using one of these Bass 4 stands, but for any of you that spent a lot of time recording, this is a fantastic design. Matt, am I missing anything?
No, I don't think so.
All right.
So you just saw some iPhone footage of one of us, walking through the room, kind of showing the setup, but you kind of get the gist of it. And when you see the full video, which you probably already seen if you're watching this, you'll see that, at its simplest form, this was a really simple idea. Let's just set up a stereo mic and perform in front of it. But we still sprinkled in some pretty cool stuff.
Well, I thought you did a beautiful job capturing it too, Matt, and keeping it simple and testament to AEA just being an incredible company and making amazing mics. This is not the first time that we have only used one AEA mic for everything, and I'm just as blown away now as I was then by just the incredible nature of what they create.
And yeah, we ended up last minute. You had asked me to kind of make the video look a little bit more film like to kind of fit the mood because we had recorded to the tape machine. But I think it's funny that you've had a huge shift in what you prefer visually after you worked with Joey on Signal and everything, because you're like, not only are you addicted to audio tape, but you're addicted to film now as well after doing that.
Yeah. Thanks to Joey, if I had my way, everything in my life would be 16 millimeter. He's also found a way to use 16 millimeter to take still photos, which is straight genius. The guy's brilliant. But yeah, you're not wrong, Matt. Thank you for honoring my love of all analog things.
But yeah, I think it all ended up coming together real well. It's got a mood and it's got a vibe and it's got a message, because I think you and I kind of started writing music the same way. We kind of started out as, it was a healthy way to get things out and journal a little bit and deal with stuff. And I think, one of the things you said earlier on when we were just talking about how, you didn't think a lot of the other parents and people at the children's hospital necessarily might have a healthy way to process all this. And, like, not that art or music or any of that, is some sort of magical thing where, you write a song about it and now it's all good. That's hardly ever the case, but I think, it can be a healthier way to deal with things in your life than other ways.
Yeah, I think I underestimated, or not underestimated, I think I took for granted just how much I use music for processing and kind of self-healing. And to your point, yeah, historically, I think that's where it starts for a lot of creatives, is they don't have a way of letting these feelings out in a way that makes sense to them, and sort of their medium ends up being this way of getting these things out. And it's a fascinating theoretically healthy way of confronting these things. But for me, what I discovered through this weird season with my son is I couldn't do it. I couldn't do the self-healing. It's like, it felt like to write about it was in some way a betrayal of the situation, or there was something opportunistic about it. There's, for a lot of writers I know, they'll, even if they're going through a really hard breakup or an unexpected funeral, they will very often, know that, well, at some point this will probably come out as a great song. But even those people, I think they have situations they encounter that are off limits, that are sort of too far, if that makes sense. And to me, I think this felt like that. But I also I underestimated rather how crippling it would be to not be able to write about it. Because if you can't write about it, it's like I didn't realize that I'd become this dependent on this means of confronting hard situations. And so, yeah, to your point, Matt, it's definitely a really useful medicine.
Yeah, and we talk about this a lot. What parts of ourselves are we going to let out in public? And I think the difference in this case is that not everyone can relate to what you went through, but I mean, you were obviously surrounded by a lot of other people that were going through the same thing at the same time. And, I think it's deeply personal in a way, but at the same time, it's surprisingly relatable. I mean, even me, I don't have kids, I'm not married or anything, but I've had to deal with like parents in the hospital. I've had to deal with myself in the hospital and friends and stuff. So, just to a bigger kind of idea, the feeling and what everyone goes through when they have to deal with stuff like this is relatable. And, unfortunately, it's something a lot of us just don't like to talk about because it's hard. And I think in our case, throwing it behind a pretty melody makes it a little easier, at least.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's interesting though. You're not wrong, Matt. I feel a little bad for, we met a lot of great doctors, but you're not wrong. The hospital, for all of us, some of my worst memories, have have direct triggers all associated with hospital rooms. And I think for a lot of people, that's the case too. There's some good news that happens in hospital rooms. Tragically, though, that's usually not the case.
Well, I'd hate to leave.
That's a high note to end on.
I know. I was gonna say I hate to leave it on that somber note, but I mean, in this case, just we'll let the song speak for itself. But yeah, it's really great. I hate saying powerful song, but I mean it is. Like it's a heavy song, and it's a cool recording experiment. So I mean, I just think it's one of those rare cases where it was definitely worth talking about after the fact, because especially stuff with like the heartbeat and the 808 going in the background. I don't think a lot of people are gonna get it until they see this or hear us talk about it. There might be a few clever people out there, but that's one of the other things I just like about literature, music, and art in general, is that if you're too obvious and just straightforward about stuff, it's not as interesting. I like books and I like music that are a little bit more layered, to where you're kind of forced to have to go back to them a few times and understand the context a little better to really get the most out of them. So yeah, I think it was, at least worth us talking about it a little bit after it had come out.
Agreed, man. Agreed. Well, thank you again for pushing me to record it again. I don't know that if you hadn't pushed me to do it, if I ever would have. So thank you again, brother.
Yeah, and I think it was a good snapshot, a rare snapshot of getting to see you do something very naturally and spur of the moment, because you and I are both like that. We have so many tools at our disposal over the years as musicians and as producers, that we overdo everything. And I think, it's one of the best things about you, and it's probably one of the worst things about you sometimes as well, because it's always, me too, it's always a balancing act of figuring out how far you're going to go. So this is like kind of a cool, rare opposite end of the spectrum kind of look at you and your music.
Well, I definitely didn't get a chance to practice, if that's what you mean.
It's the thought that counts, David. Don't worry.
The thought that counts.
I'm going to take this song.
Man.
I'm going to take this song and put it on the refrigerator. Good job, buddy.
Well, good. I'm glad someone will appreciate it.
All right, let's awkwardly end this. I'm just going to walk away because, like our music, we don't really know how to end it. Still haven't figured it out all these years later. All right, later. I'm just going to walk away
later, brother.
awkwardly.
Okay, I will too.